There it is. Good morning, guys. Good morning. New day, fresh start. How's everybody doing out there? Hey, David. Good morning. Quite the gap down we have here. How many points is it exactly? The from the settlement. From the settlement, it's 113 points. 1.7%. 1.7% gap down. Yeah, that's pretty. This is a pretty steep gap, from yesterday's low, 65.98. So we're looking at what, an 80-point gap, somewhat roughly an 80-point gap down. It's pretty steep. That's going to make things complicated. All right, let's just jump right into the charts here. Let me make sure I have this recorder running here. Hang on. Okay. Great, great. All right, cool beans. Got that going, right? All right, guys. Let's just where the way I'd like to start out today. Let's just review what happened yesterday, right? I think that's important here, because so yesterday coming into, we kind of had this gap up situation, right? And early on we said, hang on, no, not right now, not right now. Okay. All right. So yeah, coming into yesterday, we had let me just put this on RTH. Look at the regular trading hour session, like the 2 hour. Great. All right, cool. Yeah, so yesterday we came into the session and we were gapped up, and we kind of we highlighted early on in our pre-market prep that in order for us to think that, hey, we might have a tradable low here, and maybe we were going to put in, a multi-day counter trend rally, that we needed to stay above the prior day's high, above value area high, and then we could test higher to see if we can test the 6680 to 6660 to 6680, this zone right here, to actually test the downtrend, the hourly downtrend, right? Because that would give us our first sign that, hey, maybe this is going to be a multi-day low. So we got that for much of the day. Price sustained higher. But also last week, we were highlighting that the context for much of the week and for much of the downtrend was early morning strength followed by, mid to late day weakness. And then we kind of had a few days there where I think it was just Tuesday and Wednesday, where we kind of bucked that trend, right? And so that's kind of indicative of the counter trend rally that we saw. Hang on, guys. Give me a second here. Just trying to manage this. Okay. So we had prior week, we had early strength followed by late day weakness. And we were wondering, because we bucked that trend kind of on Tuesday and Wednesday and Monday here on these days, we thought, all right, well, maybe we're going to see, kind of trend rally and go up there and test those higher levels to see if we can get a trend change. But that actually wasn't the case, right? Because what we thought was price sustained higher, and then later in the day, we had, starting at about, I think it was let's see exactly. From yeah, it was from the lunch high, right? Because our timing model kind of gave us an idea that we were going to have a pivot high there, and that was marked by the S3H midday high at 12:30. And we posted about that in the room. I hope you guys are paying attention and now starting to see how the timing model works. Um, in downtrends, that midday high pivot is often the high of the day. All right. So starting about noon, from the lunchtime high, price just sold off, and we saw, we thought we had a somewhat of a late day bounce, and both tried to they held the open again, the 6606 open, and price tried to hold the gap. Well, even in the overnight session, right, we could see here that in the overnight session, price kind of held that gap, right? It was right in here. And although we had this weakness, what really mattered was that we held the gap, right? We held the RTH low, we held the open, and that kind of like, all right, well, we had this late day sell off, but bulls that certainly stood up and defended it, and we're looking for higher prices, right? All right. So then Trump comes on last night, says what he says. I don't know what he said, but obviously I know what the price is telling us, that it wasn't good, right? And so starting at about, I don't know, what time was it here? Yeah, so starting right around the speech, around 8:45, price just tanked. And I think it was probably around the time he made the comments that that this is going to go on for as long as possible. And I think it was actually, I read that it was, when he said something to the tune of, we're going to bomb them into oblivion, or, something really Trump-esque, right? Uh, which is, you know, typical Trump. But anyhow, so price caved, we sold off, and now we have this immense big gap down, right? We have an 80-point gap down, gapping down close to 1.5%. So now what do we have to consider here? Well, just from a technical standpoint, right? It kind of we're in between a rock and a hard place, right? Because so we have this kind of like this swing low, and price doesn't move in a straight line, right? So the move up, if you guys remember the move up here, let me just highlight it here, because I remember I took notes on what that was. If it When we were here on this day, I think this move right here, right? I have notes on it. So this bar right here, this big rally, this 60-point candle at lunchtime was when Iran came out and said that, okay, we're open to talks, we're open to ending this, right? And price just skyrocketed. All right. And that was kind of, the market validating those statements. So now we've come back on and we're testing into that band again. So and from a structural perspective, we all know that when the market makes a move like that, like straight up 60 points in a 5 minute print, it's going to come back and retest that. Straight up moves, that's not sustainable. The market typically wants to come back and re-auction that area. And so is that what we're seeing today, or is this a resumption of the trend? Are we going to put in a higher low relative to this low and then continue the uptrend? So what do we have to look out for? What areas should hold that would tell us, okay, well, we're going to put in a higher low, and maybe we go up there and test that 6680, 6660 area, and maybe test the hourly downtrend. Also, from a structural perspective, it kind of makes sense that we back, just because we had this low auction area, it kind of makes sense that we come back and retest that. So I'm going to be dialed in on this was, I'm pretty sure this, let's see, find this out. So this was Monday's high. Monday's high was 64.8175, right? Which is right in line with where we skyrocketed on the Iran news. Okay. So I have that kind of marked off here with this gray rectangle on the right hand 15-minute chart that has regular trading hours highlighted in dark. It has the overnight session highlighted it in the lighter gray. So I want to make sure, I want to see if we come down here in the regular trading hours, test this gap, and if it holds. If this gap holds, then what do we have to think? All right, so maybe it is true that we're gonna put in a higher low, and that this is gonna be a tradable low. We can use this low as a swing low, and look for the hourly trend to be tested. So keep an eye out for that. 66.81. The Iran news high was just in here. And that was 64, like 60, we can call it 6,500. So the overnight low is 65.03 half right now. Okay. So if this area holds, then what do we have to look for? All right. So if this area holds, maybe we come down here today and we do a look below and fail of the overnight low. And at that point, then, you know what? I'm going to be looking for, with a gap this big, we have gap rules in play, right? So gap rules tell us that we have to go with all gaps that don't try to fill early. Okay. So with this gap in play, if this area holds here, which is the Iran news high, right? 64.81-ish, right around here. If this area holds, we do a look below and fail of the overnight low, then can we expect a gap fill? Well, an 80-point gap is not going to be, it is a tough fill, right? That's a long shot. But maybe we can get a partial gap fill, and then we kind of just trade. We form this new range, right? Like right within here, above 64.81, and we start to form out a higher low, right? Like something in here, maybe something like that. Where today forms, it comes down here, test, and then we have this high up here, this high down here, and we kind of build value in here. Maybe form a higher low where we retest that down channel, this down channel trend line, and then move higher from there, go back into and fill the gap. Okay. But with gap rules in play going into today, I think that we have to just stay with the trend, which is a downtrend. And so the difference about yesterday too that I want to highlight is, so yesterday we had a gap up in a downtrend, right? So today we're gapping down in a downtrend. So that's why I'm a little less hesitant to expect a gap fill here, but maybe we get a partial gap fill, right? So we know that the overnight inventory is 100%, just about all the volume has been below the settlement. So our overnight inventory is 90% short, right? Everyone, all longs from yesterday's gap up, right? So if you bought the open yesterday, you were rewarded for large part of the day. Even later in the day, you had no reason to liquidate because on the late day weakness held the opening print. But now you're waking up to a position in drawdown, and what do you do? So those bulls from yesterday are going to be looking for for prices to get back into range and kind of recover their position. Are they going to be sellers once we get into yesterday's range or test the gap fill? Well, yeah, we'll see. But I think what's going to be key going into today is where is the opening print, right? Let's monitor for the opening print. Oh, I'm terrible at this. The opening print. And do we open and have an opening drive, reset the overnight inventory, and look for higher prices where we can start to test in here, where we start to test this swing high that started really last night at about 10 o'clock. So that's 65.52. So are we going to test 65.50, 65.52, and then repair all of this big down bar that we had last night at about 9:15? So grab this. So where's our opening print? And do we get an opening drive higher? Say we're opening here. Do we test lower, do a look below and fail? If we go back through the opening print, right, and then we come back and test it, then then this will probably set up a good long opportunity to come up here and test the 65.52. Above the 65.52, then it's anyone's call whether or not we're going to fill the gap. It's a big gap to fill. It makes trading a little bit more difficult when you have these large gaps. So that's the first scenario, right? Okay, so do we open? We get an opening drop higher, and we as soon as we open, the price just sustains above the open, much like it did yesterday. And if we get retest of that daily open and it holds, then we can get long, and we can try to target 65.50, 65.52. Okay, well, if we open and then we immediately trade lower, get below this short-term pivot at 65.15, below 65.15, I think we're going to have to target the overnight low at 65.03. And then at the overnight low, watch if we're going to get a look below and fail, right? So if we get below the overnight low, do we do something like this where we come back up, test it, maybe even test up to the 65.15, and then resume the trend down to come down and really test the 65.81 that we highlighted as the Iran news high, right? That was back here. So on the open, where's the opening print? Does the opening print sustain above 65.15? If it does, then we can use the opening print kind of as our minor support, and then we're looking for a test up here into this range, right? Ultimately, the high is 65.52, but if it forms a lower high, it would probably be from that 65.35 to 65.40 area, and we put in a lower high and we go test lower. Okay, but if we lose the opening print and we trade below 65.15, then the target becomes the overnight low. And then once we get at the overnight low, do we do a look above and look below and fail, and then come back up, get through the 65.15, through the opening print, and then ultimately come up here and test the 65.35, 65.40 area for the lower high? Or do we get up to 65.52? That's another scenario. Or do we open, trade below the overnight low, come back test it, maybe even back test 65.15, and then continue lower? So I think that those are four scenarios that could probably play out today. Either way, use those I'm going to be using those areas as my if-then scenarios, right? So where are we opening? Where's price in relative to the opening print? What is the strength and the momentum of the open, right? Do we get an opening drive, and do we blast straight to 65.35, 65.40, test that area and move beyond it. If we move beyond 65.35, 65.40, then I'm no longer looking for a lower high. What I'm looking for is a double top. So do we come up here, test this area, and make the lower high? Right, where price comes up here and then kind of rolls over, then we're targeting the overnight low. Or does price come up? Do we open drive, kind of blast through 65.35, 65.40, lower highs off the table? Then then the next place to have our attention on would be that 65.50 area for a potential, double top or triple top here. If we get above the 65.52, then maybe we can do something like this. Come up, come back down, test it, and then maybe we get a partial gap fill where we come up here and test into these areas. All right. There's the opening bell, guys. I hope that frames it out. That's the way I'm going to be looking at it going into the day. Obviously, I'm trading around the core setups that I posted in the room, so pay attention to those. But I think that this framing kind of gives us an idea for what to look for, and will hopefully keep us on the right side of the tape. Yesterday, we were able to stay on the right side because we framed it simply. We had basic scenarios, and those scenarios played out. So remember, big gaps are hard to trade early. Be patient and execute with discipline. Don't overtrade. All right. Let's take a look at what we have here. All right, really quickly, let's just see where's our opening print. All right, so our opening print 627.75, and thus far the RTH low is coming in just below it, a few ticks below it. So, I mean, it's super early, but yeah, we have that kind of that opening drive look. I know. Yep. Already prices get rejected from that 65.35 area that we highlighted earlier. First test, that's our potential lower high area. So be on alert for that. The first test of the potential lower high area that we highlighted is on the first touch, it has held. So 65.35 to 65.40 held as resistance on the first touch. Now it's important to watch the opening print, right? 65.25, 65.27. Hang on. Get the number. Nope, not that one. $65.27.75 is the open print. All right, we just came back down and back. We went below it by a point, and we found some buyers. So It looks like the opening print held on the first test, right? So we're stuck between those two areas that we highlighted, 65.35 to 65.40, the potential lower high area. If we can get above this pivot now, and maybe we can get a test up to 65.50. All right, let's take a look at the internals. In the NYSE, we are, the NYSE is 2.4 to 1 negative, 2.5 to 1 negative. NASDAQ is 3 to 1 negative, which I would expect on a big gap, on a over 1% gap down, for those to be a little bit steeper. The VIX is gapping up 10%. It's trading 27.06, and the VIX has a resistance point at 28. Let's see. Crude oil is, oh my God, crude is up 11% to 111.83. That's insane, guys. That is insane. I mean, if you've been trading markets for a long time, for even for whatever amount of time, right? I remember when crude spiked, 2011, I think 2018, like the when we were when the Ukraine war started, but just not used to crude, staying up here this long. Wild. All right, we're opening up also in extreme low ticks, right? So our opening tick was negative 1323. Crude oil is selling off now, pulling back, I should say, from 114 to 111. That's no small move there. Let's see how these internals shape up. We're back now, back below the open. So that first bounce failed. We also know that from our timing guide that we have some edge there, right? So we know that we're expecting a low pivot somewhere in the time frame of 10 to 10:45. Oh my! I forgot my trading hat. I always trade better when I have a hat on. Hey, nice long mag 65.19. I hope you took some off. I'm not sure how you trade if you scale, but watch that opening print, right? Watch the opening print. We're now below it at 65.24. We're now below that opening print. The opening print held the first touch and then immediately faded. It didn't hold the second touch. So that tells us that, the sellers are a little bit more aggressive here. All right. So if price gets below, if price gets below that 65.15 area that we highlighted earlier, we should start looking for moves to go and test the overnight low. Oh man, dang it! Oh shit! Just disconnected myself. Fuck. All right, we'll let that come back up. Dang it. All right, chopping around at the opening print. You've got a pretty big selling tail at the high. Okay. On our 15-minute, we have an inverted hammer, guys. If we take out the previous low of the 15-minute, I think you can start looking at shorts into the overnight low. The low of that bar is 65.18, which kind of goes, it is right in that lower, that band that we said, 65.15. If we get below 65.15, then you can start looking for a move down to the overnight low. I think that's on deck here, guys. We're selling off pretty aggressively. And even the ticks went up and tested the zero line and immediately faded. VIX is now above its 5-minute high, and that 4-point sell-off in crude has now been taken back, right? So we went from 114 down to 111, 110, and now we're right back to 113, 114. So we're looking for an AM. We're looking for an early low sometime between 10:15 and 10:45. Yeah, MK, that could be it. I don't know. It could be that, or it just could be all these like leadership headlines, right? Leadership headlines continue to create instability and uncertainty. The broader concern is that poor decision making at the top keeps spilling over into like the economy. ADP came in at 63,000 jobs, another sign of growth slowing. So we have reckless spending. We have a shrinking economy that's speeding up. We have war, high energy prices. I mean, the argument for higher prices gets tougher the more you look around. Didn't Oracle announce 30,000 job cut layoffs? I mean, that adds to the slowdown narrative, right? What were the Challenger job cuts? What let me see. Let me check out that news. Where did that come in at? I mean, I'm not an economist, but I mean, we got to stay abreast of this shit. Unemployment claims. Came in under the forecast, so and under the previous. So I guess that's better. But guys, the economy is clearly losing momentum. Even if the headlines soften it, very few people are paying attention to this stuff day in and day out the way we are. And so sometimes it's easy to lose the forest for the trees, but we see it every day. It's in the data, it's in the tape. Here's another thing that I want to share is that, we had, so prior to the decline, I had been highlighting that, when we were up trading in that 6,800 area, I was mentioning that, and I even wrote a piece about it in the opening print that the book had changed, like the makeup of what I had been seeing all through 2025, all the way leading up until October, November of last year, like that profile had started to change. And I kind of thought that, okay, so maybe we're in distribution. I'd only seen that once before, and that was last April. But since I'm kind of new to the option stuff, I didn't have the experience, and I didn't really trust the read, so I was willing to sit it out. But I called it out and said that I thought that the book had been changing. I thought it looked like distribution, so on. So with that being said, I looked yesterday when I was looking through it, it kind of gave the profile, and I look at it every day. This is a big part of what I do. When I was looking at it yesterday, going through it, it kind of started to look to me like there was bullish accumulation. And it was the bullish accumulation was in that 6,500 to 6,550 area. We have a GEX node, a gamma node up at 65.75. It's a massive position. So obviously we're 100 points below that. But I think that's going to really matter. Those positions, I think. So those calls were sold by the market makers, right? So they're short those calls. So what are they doing? They're selling futures, right? I mean, that part of it is not rocket science. All right, quick read on the internals. 2.2 to 1 negative on the NYSE, 2.9 to 1 negative on the NASDAQ. Our ticks are now above the zero line, guys. Heads up on that. Ticks are above the zero line, and we seem to be moving a little bit higher here. We had a decent little taper at the low. So look, guys, we held that pivot that we highlighted in the pre-market, right? 65.15 was what we needed to get below to start targeting the overnight low. That held, and now we're back up to 65.30, testing that band that we had early on, that we highlighted was going to be the potential for the lower high. Right? So if we get above 65.35, 65.40, then I think we can start targeting and looking towards 65.50 for the double, triple top. All right, a big tell here is our tick. Our tick is now, it's above the zero line. Whereas the zero line first held resistance, it's now above it. So keep an eye out on that for context and for framing for the rest of the day. Are we going to get a partial gap fill? Okay, crude is back down to 111. It went up, tested 113, and came off. And the VIX did a look above and fail of its 5-minute high. So the VIX, if you're playing the range on the VIX, it went up, came back down. That 28 level is a pretty big deal on the VIX. Yeah, yep. Oracle had a brutal layoff. I mean, think about that, right? Like, so 30,000 job cuts. Like, sometimes I read those headlines and they just, they just skirt by. But I often think about, the guy or the person, male or female, doesn't matter, who was potentially at that company for 5 years, 10 years, right? Because typically they're going to lay off higher salaried employees, right? And how devastating it is to that person or to those people. And now you take that and just multiply that by 30,000. Pretty tough. All right, we're running into problems here at the 65.35, 65.40 area. I think if we get above there, we can start looking at that 65.50 area for a potential, triple top. Right here. Really got to get better with this baby pen here. 65.50. Do we come in and put in the double top? Well, the triple top? Let's see. What's interesting to point out here, just from a structural perspective, guys, is that this 15-minute print, we had a bearish outside print here, right? Right here on this one. Bearish outside print. It tested the support that we were looking for to get lower to target the overnight low, looked below it, and then immediately reversed it. So if you have a bearish outside print and then you start testing within the wick of that print, it's game on to the opposite side. You're going to take out the opposite. Chances are you're going to test the high of that bar. All right, let's see if bulls can break through the 65.35 to 65.40 range. Again, we had a really nice taper at the lows, guys. So at the low, we saw at the low, it was a 4-contract exchange, right? So the low is 65.14.25. Starting at about 65.17, we had a really nice taper where we just started trading a couple hundred contracts. Then with 65.14.25, only 4 contracts exchanged hands. Okay, so those 4 chasers got immediately liquidated. But way before that, 65, anything down from 65.17 to 65.14, all of those people were selling lows, looking to bust through that 65.15 area that we highlighted, and price immediately reversed and they covered, and now they're fueling these higher prices. So the early sellers now are getting liquidated. They're forced to sell. And I think that now we have to focus on 65.50. Do we get the triple top or do we break through? Again, we are so far away from even a gap fill still that let's just focus on the next need, right? 65.50. If we get above 65.50, then maybe we can start doing or looking for something like this, right? We come up, come back down, maybe test the early high here. So I would want to see this 65.35 to 65.40 area hold as support. If we look above the 65.50, come back down 65.35, 40, it holds as support, and then maybe we can start making an argument for a partial gap fill. Or maybe even a full gap fill, right? So let's frame this out. Let's see where, because I keep talking about a potential partial gap fill, right? Where would that partial gap fill end, right? All right, so let's just take all these crayons off of here, all these drawing tools, and let's just simply put a fib on this. Okay, so I'm pulling a fib from yesterday's low to the overnight low. Okay. Now, if we get above 65.50, 65.60, that's like half back of that gap down range. Let me draw another fib from the overnight high to the overnight low. See what that looks like. I'm constantly measuring stuff, guys. It helps me frame moves. I suggest you get, if you don't do that, try it. All right. Yeah, I like the overnight high to the overnight low better. None of this is like, Edwards and McGee technical analysis. This is just Manny's experience analysis from 15, 20 years of doing this shit. All right, so here we go. 65.53 is halfback of the overnight range. Sorry, 65.68 is halfback of the overnight range. I would say that if we can get above 65.60, above halfback, 65.68 to 65.75, then we can start looking at, okay, we're going to go fill the gap to yesterday's low, 65.98. We have a pretty thrusty move here off the lows. Let's see if internals are confirming it, okay? So the VIX pulled up. It went over its 5-minute high. It tested that 27.08 area, and we know we have 28 as resistance, and now it took out its early 5-minute range low and is moving down pretty aggressively. Our ticks have strengthened up quite a bit, so that we're seeing some buying here. There's definitely some buying. We're going to take a look at the weighted AD here in a minute. Let's see. What are the needs in crude? Got to get that move up higher in crude, man. Just one. Oh, I should have just bought one. I know it. I knew it. I saw it last night. I was like, screw it. Why don't you just buy one micro CL contract and just, risk $300 on it and see what it gets you. But I didn't do that. Hey, heads up here. The Russell is over. So the equivalent of what on ES, so the equivalent of 65.50 on ES, which we're testing right now, the Russell is already broken through that high pivot. Okay? The Russell is already looking above that high pivot. The NASDAQ and the ES are testing that high pivot. Let's see. So areas for where this can, if the gap is going to hold, right? If the gap is going to hold, 65.68 is halfback. Tuesday's RTH high, Tuesday's regular trading hours high is 65.83. 65.83, which kind of lines up with yesterday's low at 65.98. You can see here, it's kind of like this band that I'm looking at right here, right? So this is RTH high right here. And then look, we kind of had this low here. We had this low right here that comes in at 65.90. So watch that 65.80, 65.85 to 65.90 for potential partial gap fill. I know that's pretty close to the gap fill, but at that point you probably have so much momentum. All the overnight inventory is getting liquidated. The first need right here is 65.50. We're testing it. Let's see what kind of strength and momentum we can move through this area. As I highlighted, the Russell is already through that pivot. Okay. Russell is already through it. NASDAQ is testing it as well. Internals, 1.8 to 1 negative on the NYSE, 2 to 1 negative on the NASDAQ. Our ticks are now testing the 0 line and above. You think 66, 68? Man, the structure on crude is just so wonky with that bleed up. It's hard to get a read on it. You got to zoom out here, Manny. Yeah, I'm done for day 2. I'm done for the day also. I had a breakdown short last night on the news. I mean, we when we traded below yesterday's low, I just sold it. I sold I think I sold 65 nine I think I got 65.89, 65.88, and I rode that down to like 65 68 and then called it. Yeah, it worked out pretty well. Pretty happy about that. And now for the day, I am just running the ATA strategies here. So I just had a stop out on the A10, had a stop out here. He got short right at the area where we were highlighting. That's why I let it ride. So it sold 65.34 and it took a stop, 6 point stop. I let the strategies run here on their own. I try not to get in the way of them unless I see it's a blatant, mistake. All right, now we're through that area, guys. We popped right through the area. We popped through 65.50 with some strength and some momentum. All right, ticks are confirming. Oil's coming off. It's now testing 110. The VIX has been moving straight down. So yeah, we held the areas that we needed to, and now we're seeing a continuation. Do we get a full gap fill? That's the question. What do you think, guys? Are we going to get a gap fill? Yeah, I picked up I think it was 28 points. I had three contracts on, and I traded them all in, all out. So um just got a nice juicy check the other on Monday. Pretty happy about that. Let me know what you guys see, or what you guys are trading, how you seeing it. Was the read clear enough this morning? Let me know how I can help you out in any way. If I wasn't clear, if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. No, I am not a thin-skinned person. I can take it. I also dish it. So, um, if you're of the sensitive variety, just know I don't mean anything by it. All right, low volume notch at 65.53 quarter, guys. Watch that. Thanks, Jay. Watch that 65.53 notch right there. It's a low volume node. Sorry, 65. Yeah, 55.53 quarter. Low volume node. We just came down test of 65.53.50 and bounced. That also tends to line up with our previous pivot high at 65.50, what we were targeting if we got above 65.35. Again, we have a pretty good move here off the lows, right? But what have we been seeing? What has been the context yesterday and much of last week, right? Early morning strength followed by late day weakness, right? So we came into today, we're gapping down in a downtrend, and now what we're seeing is an inventory correction, right? So the overnight inventories being liquidated. I don't think that there's I don't think we can get what I mean to say with this is I don't think we can get all bulled up because because prices have been moving higher for half an hour. The hourly trend is still firmly down. We're gapping down in a downtrend. Crude is trading 111. That's insane. That is so wild. All right, let's take a look at the weighted AD in our sector list and see what we have there. All right, here's our sector list, all right? Take a look at our core sector list, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sectors green for 1, 2, 3 sectors red. Interestingly enough, though, guys, consumer discretionary and consumer staples are the red. That's like a risk on profile. That's odd. You know what though? But so when you think about it, what we're seeing, like I highlighted that I thought we were seeing some accumulation patterns in the options book. Maybe this is a clue here. Oh, let's go check. Let me go check. Let's check the dark pool index and see if those guys are buying. Sneaky fuckers. Keep an eye on those dark pools, guys. Those guys, obviously, they're hiding their transactions for a reason, right? Oh, shit. All right. Look at this. Heads up. Look at this, right? So one thing I was pointing out and sharing with you guys was this. Was that. Hang on. Right? So where was it? So typically what you want to see is a divergence, right? So the blue line is the dark pool index. The green line is the SPX, right? So what you want to see is SPX moving down, right? Like here, let me just erase these and use the other marker. What we want to see is something like this, where ES is moving, where SPX is moving down, but the dark pool index is moving up, right? Because that means we have buyers that are concealing their positions, right? They're getting low. Like, hey, we're back above that 65.50. It held on the pullback, so maintain a long focus, guys. All right, so real quick on the dark pool index. Look, so we have on the move down, it was being confirmed, right? So on the move down, it was confirmed by the dark pool. Dark pools were sellers, were net sellers on the way coming down, right? Coming down, dark. They were sellers. So we just bounced, and look, tradable, bounce, 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 all marked lows, right? So there's no longer a divergence there. All right, good to know. Good to know. Good to know. All right, so that, I mean, look, that's a broadsword, right? It's hard to trade that in the day time frame, but just know that. So I'm looking at those things as, are there early signs of a counter trend going on? That's all. I'm still going to trade my setups, the way I see them, and try to execute in a real discipline and in a disciplined way, and take planned trades that make sense, framed around what we're seeing in the tape. All right, let's take a look at the internals. 1.8 to 1 negative on the NYSE, 1.9 to 1 negative on the NASDAQ. Crude is now down below 111, right? The VIX is testing 2632. Gold is down almost 3%. Bitcoin is testing that support down at 66,000 support. Keep an eye out for that. All you Bitcoin traders, let's see what my ATAs are doing. Okay, so boom, I got an A4. That's what I love about the ATAs, guys. Like, I'll turn around and I'll have an executed trade and I didn't even see it. I mean, typically when I'm here alone and I'm not on stream, I'm watching them. But I don't micromanage them, and I don't fixate on them. I kind of try to stay out of the way. Okay. But I had a nice little A4 here execute. I love having these running in the background. They just add some better alpha. Some people like to trade prop firms and do like multiple accounts, right? So one trade, 20 accounts or 10 accounts or whatever the case might be. And I was never a big fan of that. So I'm okay with trading maybe two accounts. And I have copy traded before, but I don't know. Like for me, I just see it as this: is why trade? Two different accounts. Maybe just increase your position size. I'd rather not burn an account. I'd rather uh I'd rather keep the account and trade one at a time. But that just goes into my more that's just how I like to execute it. There are some guys that are crushing it. I mean, crushing it. Trading 20 accounts and maybe that's the way to go. It's not something that works for me. It sounds really sexy though, right? One trade, 20 accounts, boom. I remember I tried it once and I had such a hard time with it. Yeah, it wasn't for me. All right. So now on the ATAs, let's see what I have here. So ATA would get me long at 65.43 and 65.58. I'm about to shut this one off though because this account has done really well. Um, that account is up nicely. I might shut that one down. Yeah, it's got a couple grand in it. I might have to protect that. I might let it go one more as this thing is moving out pretty well. All right, poppage, moving higher here, guys. Moving higher with strength and momentum. Again, that's what we said we wanted to see, right? We wanted to see us break through 65.50 with strength and momentum. And then at that point, we could start thinking about, where's this partial gap? Where could this partial gap fill, right? Or are we going to see a move that carries us right into a gap fill? But either way, I think the most important part was that we framed that, hey, below 65.15, we want to be short, targeting the overnight low. That ended up holding. Even besides that bearish 15-minute print, it held the low and skyrocketed. Retest the first test of 65.35, which we were looking to be the lower high, was taken out. Once that 65.15 held and we got above 65.35, in hindsight, right, I should have added. So I still have a long position on. I should have added to it. I didn't think of it. I was too busy calling it out, but it's all right. Totally fine with letting one slide or two, whatever. 66.17. All right, let's see what all right, right off that 50. Yeah. Let's see what that looks like here. Hang on a second. 66.17. Yeah, that's the settlement. Interestingly enough, Matt, 66.17 the settlement, and it's yesterday's volume point of control, regular trading hours volume point of control. So I would expect if we do get there, if you for all you scalpers, I mean, that's a first touch fade, right? That's an easy layup. If you want to scalp it for like 2 or 3 points, or what I mean, I wouldn't overstay my welcome in that trade. But if I just put a limit order there and slap up, I don't know, 5-point stop on it, 5-point target, and walk out of the room. Okay, hey, heads up. In the overnight session, right, our single print started 65.71. So look for that to be an area where it's lightly auctioned, low volume, right? So typically what we're going to see is either a rejection of that area or we're just going to skyrocket right through it, right? With momentum. But we are at those areas right now. We are trading halfback of the overnight range, right? So remember we highlighted that where could we see where were the potential areas for a partial gap fill? So where would price go to, and if we end this day with the gap unfilled, where's the high? Right? That's kind of the thinking there. And so if we framed out the overnight range, and the overnight range gave us halfback at 65.68. So you can see that automatically, price came up there and tested it, and immediately it saw some sellers. It pulled back a little bit, either profit takers into the level, long selling, covering their positions, shorts being stopped out, whatever the case might be. You pick your poison there. But we break above there, guys, and now we can start, we break above there. We start to build value. But I think that what bulls want to see is those single prints fill with gusto, right? So up here, 65.71. Right? And then if we can get above 65.71, then we can start testing that value area low. Let me see what day was that. So we can start testing Tuesday Globex session value area low. There's a low volume node there too. So heads up on that. 65.78. 65.78. All right, we're having trouble with that 68 here. So just be aware of that. What am I looking for now? Yeah, that's a good question. So what I'm looking for now is a higher low, right? So we have the opening drive higher. We're kind of pausing at the area where we knew we were going to run into some trouble, right? So now let's see on any pullback. We already had one here, right? You can see it right here. We held this area. So it's been tested once. So it's been tested once, right? That's how ES is, right? Loves to trap. So it's the way I like to look at it is, okay, if that's the trap, where's the real level? Right? So here's the way I would look at it is this was the obvious level, the most bullish one. If we come back down, then I'd be looking for this to hold. Right? Maybe here. 65.35, 65.40. I don't want to get below that. Get below that, we start to look at the overnight low. Right? Do a little look below and fail right here, and then come back up here, and then maybe we just come. Oh God, I got to get better at this. We come back in here, and then maybe extend higher to a gap fill, or just do something like this, and then we'll reassess. Whether we go here or whether we go here. Let's take a look at the internals to let that guide us. 1.6 to 1 negative on the NYSE. 1.6 to 1 negative on the NASDAQ. The Russell's ripping. Crude oil's hanging out at that 110 level. The VIX is down to 26. Ticks are maintaining positive. And let's just take a look at our core sector list. Where is that? Come on. Let's go. All right. Hey, so wait, where is it? You little bitch. Come here. All right. Yep. So look at our core sector list. Kind of confirming, right? So you said this is why it's important to look at these things, guys, because this counter trend rally, right? You know, it's with the dark pool index confirmed for us that we had buyers at the low, right? Time out. So the dark pool kind of confirmed that we had that there were buyers at those lows. Whether we move higher or not, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to us. We're daytime frame guys, right? But we're seeing here that this gap down is not broad-based, right? Our core sector list, infotech, healthcare, consumer discretionary, communications, financials, industrials, real estate, materials, and utilities are all green. The only thing negative from the open is energy and consumer staples. And this is what you want to see, right? So we want to see energy weaker off the open. We want to see defensives weaker off the open. And we're getting that, right? If you're a bull, if you're a bull. I think we're kind of trying to frame the argument for is there an argument and can we make a solid, educated guess for a full gap fill, right? Maybe get up there and test MAG's level of 66.17, test the settlement, test the volume point of control, or at least get into yesterday's range, right? And we're seeing that now up 65.71. Yeah, yep. Good eye there. NVIDIA is down 0.5%. That's nothing. Microsoft, down 0.75%. Apple down 1.5%. Tesla's down 3%. Wouldn't make too much of that. All right. So look, and then also our weighted AD, right? So this is testing everything from the open. Our weighted AD has been nothing but green from the open, guys. Green weighted AD from the open. So what are our sectors? What are our internals doing measured from the opening print, not from yesterday's close, right? Because from yesterday's close, everything's going to look negative, right? We want to know what's happening from the open, not relative to the prior day's close. All right. All right, so we're over half back now at 65.68. Again, what areas are we need to, where are we going to run into trouble? Where do longs run into trouble here? Or where's the potential fade for, sellers? All right, let's take a look at that. Yeah, I think we highlighted it here. It was Tuesday's regular trading hours high, 65.80 to kind of like 65.85, right? That's this pullback low. I know that we have our RTH low. Hang on, let me just fix this. It's getting a little bit annoying. All right. So we know that we had our RTH low here, 65.98, but we have to look at these pivots here, 65.83 and 85, right? Which line up with Tuesday's RTH high. So on the overnight session, right, we had this strength. We had a continuation, kind of like this ascending pennant, right? that broke out to the upside. We had an ascending pennant that broke out to the upside. It came back, it tested it, it back tested it, it held in the overnight session once, rallied, came back, double test, back tested it again, it held again, and that was the gap, and we held and we went higher. So yeah, for sure, it kind of makes sense, right? When you frame it out that way, this is where we can run into some trouble. 65.80, 65.85. Keep an eye out for that. Yeah. Yep. I like. Yep. Agreed. 82. It's right in that band. J Murrow is right in that band. Okay. Hey, let's keep an eye on crude, right? Oh, hey, heads up. Look at this. 10 years coming off, down 1/4%. Straight down since the open. Straight down. Straight down. All right, coming into test. Tuesday's regular trading hours high. Tuesday's regular trading hours high, 65.83. Keep an eye out for that. I got to check my ATAs. Okay. Yep, looking good. Looking good on that. Let's see, this is looking okay. Could be looking better. It makes complete sense for me here that we see a little pause and maybe a little pullback. It just makes a lot of sense here. You know, we've had an open drive, a rip higher. I mean, look, by all means, continue to rip straight higher. Who am I to stand in your way? So hey, so let's say, you know, you're just tuning in right now and you're wondering what's going on. So, and you're looking to place a trade, right? So right now, if you're just logging in and you're looking for something, and you're looking for, hey, where's my first trade going to be? All right. So what we've had thus far is we had an attempted test of the overnight low off the open. So we had an opening print. We traded above it, came back below it, lost it. But the attempt to test the overnight low failed at this 65.15 micro support pivot. Okay. That held. We went right back through the open, took out the early high, which we thought was going to be potential for a lower high. And now we're seeing higher prices pretty much on a straight line move higher. So it you know, I hate recommending shit, but but what we could do, so what I'd be looking for, like I said, is the test back here to 65.50, maybe even as long as 65.35, 65.40. I'm a buyer right in here. Right. And then I can scalp that and I don't even need a new high. Right. Then I'm not in jeopardy of a partial gap fill. Coming down here, we also have a low volume node, right? And if okay, I get it. If you're impatient, you know, you have to have some kind of patience, right? So any test of VWAP, I think, is a first touch fade, right? So if we come back down here and test VWAP, it's going to bounce a few points. That's an idea, right? We also have this low volume node here at 65.52. Also has a fib cluster there that's going to act as support. So these blue lines right here, those are fib clusters. A large part of what I do is determined upon those fib clusters. I have another chart that I can show you, my main chart that I get those from. The time frames matter. The look back period matters a lot on those. I'll get into that later. Let me stick to the tape. So look, we have a low volume node right here, a 65.5250, which lines with our prior high. So I think that, and VWAP is right there. So that could probably be a first touch bounce. Ooh, poppage. Popping here, guys. Heads up. Testing now. We're going to test that area 65.83, 65.85. Heads up. Stay alert here. Nary a pullback. Not even a, Man, this is this is the type of long trade you know I get biologically excited about because it's like you know if you got in, you took no heat. It's just higher prices. You know, it's very simple. It's yeah. I got to figure out why the hell this thing is not triggering, man. Hang tight, guys. Just a little tech update, tech break here, but I think we pretty much have it framed out right now and what to look for, what's next, and we have pretty much all our if thens satisfied here. Let's go. What a thrusty move. Anybody long this? I hope you are. I hope I it would mean the world to me if I knew that I'm helping you guys make some money. Nice. Good job, JB. Yeah. Get excited about we kind of just thanks, Danny. Thanks. Yeah, I think that we stayed on the right side. We were looking for we know what to look for coming in, and that's kind of playing out here. So um hopefully everybody's profiting on it, man. That's what this is all about. You know, a long time ago, you know, back in the oh god, man, like, you know, in the what I have to say, like, you know, the hard years were like 2012. Figure this shit out. I'm gonna go find a me and I'm gonna help that guy. Um, and so that's just a you know, and of course I obviously can't help anyone until I can help myself, right? You can't really help other people if you're you know if you're you know unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who you know who can't trade a lick and are out there offering advice, and that's fine, whatever, you know, those who can't do teach, right? Here we go, 6617. There you go, Mag. There's your level. We're gonna hit the settlement, guys. That's amazing. What a thrusty, oh my god, what a great move. What a great fucking move here. Love this shit. Excuse me. Oh, that's amazing. Great move here. Sweet. I, guys, man, I'm sorry. Sorry if any of you are short and I'm rooting against you. That's not my point. I'm just kind of, you know, rooting for the framing that we use coming into today. If you were listening, right, you're definitely not. I mean, you make your own decisions, but I'm hoping that you guys are long as I am. I really hope you are, because this is what it's all about right here. Sick move. You know, you frame it with good analysis, and then you execute that shit with discipline. LFG. Yes, I was saying like there are a lot of people out there that are offering advice and can't trade a lick, right? And it's not and it's deeper than having levels too, because everybody's got levels, right? I learned that real quick. Like everyone has levels, but not everyone can trade. And trading is really more about what goes on between the ears, right? And that's what makes it so frustrating is that it's so seemingly easy and yet so hard. But if you train the right way and you focus on developing the right disciplines, if you train the right way and you focus on developing the right disciplines, you can make a you can make a nice living here. The one thing that kind of that I'm not super happy about with trading, though, even despite being profitable or whatever the case might be, is that it's also the uh the unpredictability of the income, right? So like I've you know aside from trading, I also I'm also a real estate developer, right? So I've developed a ton of real estate. At one point, not too long ago, I had 14 townhomes going, and like on one street, right? And so what's great about that is that you know what your exit is. You know it pretty much before you get into the deal, right? Like, all right, basically, like I knew I had an average of 72% cash on cash return for every deal I did. So I knew I was in that bull mark, right? So if I invested $100, I was going to make $172. I knew that going in. With trading, you don't know what your year is going to look like, especially because some of the best trading is later in the year. So it's hard to frame it out. It's hard to understand, what your year is going to look like. You just, you try to do your best to make as much as you can. Hey, look at this, guys. We are now through settlement, through the volume point of control. And price didn't even stop there. Not even a hiccup. But wait, that's a pretty gnarly pullback. 66.43. We just dropped 20 points. Like that's a pretty gnarly wick right there. Is there news or something? Did I miss something? Yeah, headline move. Got it. Thank you. Shit, I should have known that. I should have covered up on that pub. Dang it. Sure did, David. Open range. Yeah, of course. Yep. Nice, nice, nice. Nice. Glad that's working out for you, buddy. So I'm I'm coaching a buddy of mine. A lot of you guys know I'm a baseball coach. I've been coaching baseball. I played it. I never got paid to play, and I probably wasn't as good as what I thought I was. But I did play it at a pretty high level in college and stuff, and so a lot of the similarities. I love coaching because, especially, so I started coaching. I went back and started coaching my old high school, right? And so I was coaching baseball, high school boys for about 5 or 6 years, and then we left, and I focused on coaching my kids. So I have 3 kids. I have twins and my oldest daughter. So my oldest daughter is a pretty good softball player. So she's a freshman, and she just varsityed as a freshman, and she's starting, and she's a really good team too. So by the way, 42 girls came to try out. They were only taking like 7, and they had a team full of seniors, right? And my daughter is on that team as a freshman, and she hits 4. So she's pretty good. And I don't, and I'm not bragging. I'm just really proud of her. And so I'm also coaching my son, and there are so many similarities, like to to coaching anything, I think, and with trading, right? Because if you approach it from a perspective of, hey, I want to get a big hit in the moment, and you didn't do the work, you didn't do the prep, you don't have the right mindset, then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. But trading, like a lot of other things, if if you put in the reps, you put in the time, and you focus on, you know, quality, not quantity. Because I mean, it's really easy to get distracted and just want the money now, right? Because behavioral economics and all that. But if you focus on, if you shift your focus and say, okay, look, me, it was always about trying to develop a consistent income, and so I needed a consistent process first for that. So if you focus on doing the right things and you focus on your process, and and it's hard to do. I won't, not saying it isn't, but if you focus on the right thing, then all of a sudden the results just start taking, like, the less I focus on the results, the better they become. It's just this weird thing. It's just weird. It's like I tell kids, hey, don't think when you go into the hitter's box. There's no thinking in there. You're just letting your body take over. And in trading, it's the same way, right? Let your process take over. Because in the heat of the moment, if you're trading, this news spike, I'm making a funny video on this. If you're trading this news spike, today's probably a good day for it to release it. If you're trading this news spike and you're chasing it around, you're gonna get lucky here and there, but over the long term, it's probably you're probably gonna run into problems. Hopefully, you don't. I wish everybody the most success. We just want to be around. I want to trade with other winners. Um, I want to be a group. I want to be around a group of smart people, a bunch of guys, a bunch of traders getting after it and making good decisions and taking Wall Street for all it offers. Yeah, they truly do. It's hard to release it, right? But yeah, they tend to end up taking care of themselves. I wish I would have known. I wish I would have believed that, like, my first 5 years. I was so, you know, I just approached it wrong. Just fine. I think everybody has their, you know. I think it's our failures that ultimately make us better in life. You know, there wouldn't be sunshine if it wasn't for rain. Okay, so heads up here. Our timing guide. Let me get it up. Expecting a low pivot between 10:15 and 10:45. That window is now closing. Okay, so then following that, expecting a high pivot somewhere between 11 and 11:45. Okay. So I'm going to use that high pivot wherever it is. It might be a lower high, it might be a higher high. I don't know. But that's when I'm going to cover this long trade. Right. So I'm going to give it another half an hour. I'm not going to look at it very much. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at price when it's pulling back. So if you guys see on your screen here, this is where typically where I would walk out because my ATAs have me short in one and long in the other. I should have shut it. I wasn't paying attention. I should have shut it off. Yeah. IFR, VFR. Fudge. Hey, I wonder how Danny's feeling. Danny, if you're listening, I wonder how you're feeling, bud. I hope you're recuperating. Danny's been a bit under the weather. All right, coming back down into test value area low 6606. Hey, remember that 6606 was also our yesterday open print. The 6606 quarter. We're now below that. God damn it. Fuck. Oh, I have to remember that you guys can hear everything. Haha. Yep. Yep, for sure. All right, let's take a look now. Ha. So, all right. So it's a net. Let me just check the math on it. It was largely a break even on that. Yeah. So that long short right there that I was talking about, that ended up being a net $25 gain. So whatever, scratch. On to the next. All right, let's take a look at our internals now after the pop, right? So we have NYSE 1.1, 1-to-1 negative on the NYSE, 1-to-1 positive on the NASDAQ. Crude got down to, wow, it dipped pretty low, but it came back up down to 106. It's now trading 109. Those are massive moves in crude, man. Massive move. I should be trading crude because there's some good money. I mean, you could trade crude 2 micros and you can make yourself, $1,000, $2,000. That's enough to keep the lights on and keep the bill collectors away. All right, here we go. So we're expecting a low pivot now, right? Kind of said that we were, that window closes coming into 10:55, and I'm going to look to cover the long position into 11:15, 11:30. So giving that another 20 minutes to play out. Not looking at it. I know how to hack myself. That has often backfired on me. I mean, you're always going to deal with what coulda, woulda, shouldas, right? So there's been times where I've left the position on, and I said, "All right, I'm not gonna watch the pullback, right? Because I know it's not good for me." And then, the price pulls all the way back to my entry, and I end up getting screwed on the position, right? But if I would have not walked away, and just closed the trade, that would have been the better outcome. And then I have to sit with that kind of enough. But I just try to again and think about the ins and outs of trading. You don't have to let it. It's your decision. Man, I have this had an account there that I wasn't focused on. Bye.